All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you here for our Judiciary, House Judiciary meeting. And Brady, would you call the roll for us?
Hill.
Here.
Wadsworth.
Here.
England.
Here.
Almond. Bedsole. Chestnut.
Here.
Faulkner.
Here.
McClammy. Pettis. Robbins. Simpson. Standridge.
Here.
Starnes.
Here.
Stringer.
Here.
Tillman.
Here.
There's a quorum.
Good deal. Thank y'all. We're welcome. Glad to have all of you here with us today. We've got, we don't really have very many bills, about 8, I think. We've had a couple of them asked to be carried over. We're going to certainly honor that. But we're going to start with Senate Bill 55. And I think, Representative Allman, aren't you going to do this one and the next one? So we'll let you just go ahead with Senate Bill 55 and then go right into 11.
Okay, I have, Mr. Chairman and committee, I have 2 bills to present that have both been through committees already. The first one is SB 55 in front of you, which is one that I brought before you, a House version, identical version that you passed out of committee. And it passed out of the Senate exactly the same as we passed it out of our committee. However, our keen analysts here picked up on a couple of technical issues that we need to address. So thank you, Mr. Hawthorne, for catching those. So I do have an amendment to offer at the appropriate time.
Yes, ma'am. Let's do that.
Okay, and I guess I should have said this is that Colby-Spangler Act, the supported decision-making agreements, if everybody remembers. If you have questions, please ask. But otherwise, the amendment just is just technical in nature only. It's we added the forms at the end, and so it moved lines around in sections. So we're just cleaning that up, and that's all the amendment does.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Representative Allman, is it, I know we passed the Colby Act this session, not long ago. Is these changes, Ray, did we make these changes to the House bill already?
No, this is the first, he's just caught this. We did not make these to my bill. They did not make them in the Senate.
Yours would have to be amended on the floor.
I'm just gonna, that's right, or I'll just offer this SB 55 on the floor, substitute it. Well, unless.
Anyway, I just, okay, so we have not made these two.
No.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Taylor.
I must adopt the amendment.
There's a motion to adopt the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any questions on the amendment? All in favor of adopting the amendment, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, Representative Allman, your amendment is adopted.
So then I would just,
Okay. Second. Motion and a second for a favorable report on Senate Bill 55. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, ma'am. It is, you got a favorable report as amended.
okay.
And next one, let's go ahead while you're here and do Senate Bill 11.
Okay, Senate Bill 11 is identical to House Bill 47 that I had in Financial Services Committee, and then Senate bill got sent here. So that's been passed out of Financial Services Committee. I passed it on the House floor yesterday, but just in essence what it is an Alabama Uniform Trust Code amendment. This is an Alabama Law Institute sponsored bill, and it simply updates the trust code to allow a trustee to terminate or dissolve an uneconomical trust at $100,000 or less, raises it from $50,000 or less.
Yes, sir.
We've heard this yesterday.
You did, so I just said, Mr. England, yes, I did. I passed it on the House floor, but it's, this is the Senate version.
Move for favorable report.
Second.
Second. There's a motion and a second for a favorable report for Senate Bill 11. Is there any discussion on it? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? Favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
House Bill 6, Representative Pasquale.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, definitely a blessing to be here today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about HB 6. I call this a simple bill. This bill is going to codify 100 years of U.S. Supreme Court case law and also Alabama Supreme Court case law. So when I say codify, the goal is to put this in Alabama code that parents have fundamental rights to direct the upbringing of their children, including education, care, custody, and control. And when I say fundamental rights, that's very important, especially here in Alabama. Fundamental rights being given by God. So when kids exist, there's an order. God give the parents the responsibility to make those decisions. But the bill also, it acknowledges that the state may have a compelling interest and say, what is a compelling state interest? One example, after I had a conversation with our state superintendent, Dr. Mackey, and sharing that when we pass this legislation, the compelling state interest that kids go to school, it still exists. I received a phone call last week from a young lady in our district, and her child was sick for the last couple of months and missed many days of school. And so she got a phone call that, your child, she fell into truancy law issue. The state have a compelling state interest, so this law will not change that. Another example of compelling state interest, actually is going to be addressing an amendment. Department of Human Resources, this will not change the compelling state interest as far as child abuse neglect. So once again, the purpose of this bill is simply to codify 100 years of Supreme Court rulings. You receive a legislative overview in your package. It states, it highlighted, why do we need the parental rights bill in Alabama? We will be joining 15 other states throughout the country that have already passed this similar legislation. And I'll just special thanks to the chairman for your open door, just give me an opportunity to sit down with you, explain the purpose of this bill, answer any questions that you had, and that actually led to an amendment. So at the appropriate time.
Let's talk about the order your amendment added to the bill, before we take the bill up in hush.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment's going to replace line 39 on page 2 with the following: restrictive means possible to further that interest. Also in C, this section may be construed to authorize or allowing a parent to engage in child abuse or neglect as defined in Chapter 15 and 16 of Title 26 Code of Alabama.
Okay. So what it said, it will not be construed so as to authorize that. All right, so that is the amendment. Is there a motion to adopt that amendment? Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sir. I'm sorry, you did. Representative Stringer, you made the motion, therefore my bad. That is the motion. Who seconded it?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we got a motion and a second to adopt that amendment. Is there any discussion on that amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so it's back to you, Mr. Pasquale, your bill, HB 6 as amended.
Yes, and then thank you for that amendment. Like I said, it's going to reiterate to everyone in the great state of Alabama that this doesn't change that. Once again, that's a compelling state interest. And if there's no questions, I will ask
You ready? All right, I'll accept a motion for a favorable report as amended.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Is there a second? Second, thank you. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? Yes, sir, please.
Representative Pascal, how will this affect the current standard we have of the best interest of the child? If we pass this, what will it do with that standard?
it doesn't change that at all. This is just simply our Supreme Court have repeatedly stated that the best interest of the child is a state compelling state interest. It doesn't change that. It doesn't change any existing law. It just codified that into the Alabama Code, which I think is appropriate. We've seen a lot of things taking place throughout our country. and this just being proactive instead of reactive.
Any further questions? You know, Mr. Pasquale, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with this bill. And I think we do have rights as parents. And I think we've ruled on that in our courts, and I think they've ruled on appellate level courts. We need to be cognizant of the fact that not only do parents have rights, but parents have responsibilities and duties, and they need to take as much time exercising the responsibility to their children as they do in the rights to rear their children. But I got you. I think you agree with that too, don't you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to give this bill as amended a favorable report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, no. Thank you a lot, Mr. Pasquale.
All right, thank you so much.
Representative Drummond, this is House Bill 123.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the committee. I wanted to thank you all for this opportunity. House Bill 123 is a real simple bill. It does not violate anyone's right or take away anyone's Second Amendment right. This bill is simple. And as the chair just said about the previous bill that was just given a favorable report, this is a bill that makes parents responsible. It is a bill that will require that if a weapon is found on a school campus and the authorities trace it back to the household of a parent or a guardian and the gun belongs to them, that guardian will be held responsible. That's the simple part of the bill. That's it, Mr. Chair. I have 2 amendments, and I certainly would entertain any questions.
All right, let's take a few minutes. You want to
Okay, I've got 2 of your members who have the amendments.
one.
All right. First Amendment would be replace line 93 on page 4 with the following: is guilty of a Class C felony. Paren 3 would then read, for purposes of this subsection, reasonably secure includes storing a firearm using a trigger locker in a lockbox or gun safe that requires a key, numerical or alphanumerical combination, or fingerprint to open. This subdivision shall not be interpreted to exclude other banners of storage from the meaning of reasonably secure as used within this subsection. I move for adoption.
Second.
Adoption of that amendment.
Second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Done. What's your next amendment?
Next amendment changes it from a Class C felony to a Class A misdemeanor.
So moved.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to give that amendment, adopt that amendment. Is there any discussion on that amendment?
I have a procedural question here. So if we, on the First Amendment, just so we're clear, so if we change it from a Class A misdemeanor with this amendment, but then this amendment now says, it will still say guilty of a Class C felony. So
the First Amendment keeps it as a C felony, and the Second Amendment is the First Amendment.
To a felony.
okay, okay. So that's my fault. I got out of order on which one is halfway. Okay.
That's okay. That's why Ray keeps us straight, you know, so we try not to have any inconsistencies in it. Sir.
Representative Drummond, this amendment, not the part changing it to a Class A misdemeanor, but the paragraph there on the amendment, it looks like you're just including, I was just going to kind of get a little explanation from you of why it appears what you've done is just offered what reasonably secure can mean.
Exactly.
But you're not limiting it to, it doesn't have to be just storing a firearm using a trigger lock or in a lock box or gun safe, but you're saying that is something that is, essentially you're showing an example of reasonably secure.
That is exactly right, Representative Faulkner. Those are just some of the examples that we'd like to give, because reasonably secured, and I'll give you an example of a parent that contacted me that said, if I had my weapon with a trigger lock on the gun and my 4-year-old, he has a 4-year-old, and he takes it to school, will I be penalized under your law? The answer would be no, because he's still being responsible. That gun is still secured. That student will not be able to use that weapon. So thank you.
And other methods besides that could be found to be also reasonably secure besides these.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ingram, go ahead.
At the appropriate time, I'd like to move to give the bill a favorable report as amended.
And I thought we
did.
We've amended this bill twice, and the motion is to give the bill a favorable report as amended 2 times, right, Mr. England?
Yes.
Is there a second? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Sure, go ahead.
Basically, what this does is if a parent can be charged if their child gets the gun, carries it to school, the parent can be charged with this crime. Is that correct?
If that weapon was not reasonably secured, yes, sir.
And on the parent.
Sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So could we have not considered maybe doing a bill that would make it, if the weapon was used, the parent would be charged?
You know, I thought about that, but you have to ask yourself if and when, and I think it's when, given all of what has happened. And please know that this bill was filed long before Nashville, the shooting there. So I think that we need to do everything that we can to protect not only our children, but also the campuses and those faculty members and everybody that comes in contact on a school campus.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm just, trying to make sure we're not causing some unintended victims with that. The situation in Nashville and some of the other ones weapons were not used from their parents. So, I'm just trying to make sure. I know in certain scenarios, some parents keep theirs secure in their homes and their bedrooms or closets. And, even though they consider that reasonably secure, that it could also potentially still be, I guess something worse could happen. So.
Well, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and that weapon ends up on a school campus and children are killed, or a teacher or whoever on that campus. This bill only tells a parent that you've got to be responsible. As we just said previously, there's a responsibility to being a parent, and that's what this bill is talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I do have a question, and one of it stems from a few years ago. I was on the school board in our local county, and we had a situation come up about a firearm. And basically, there's I'm in a rural county, and there's a lot of people that hunt, a lot of teenagers that hunt. So they have access to their hunting guns, to be able to hunt when they want to. They have permission from their parents. We're talking about older students, in high school. And so we had a situation where a student he accidentally left his hunting gun in his vehicle. And then we had to address it at the school board. And it was, as soon as he found out, the student did, he went to the people at school and said, listen, I accidentally, and so we had that situation. In those kind of situations, I don't know, would that parent then be subject to a criminal charge under some type of scenario like that?
In listening to you, you're talking about an older student.
Yeah.
This is 17 and under. that I'm referring to.
Right.
That student that is on the school campus. So that older student that's going hunting with you, this bill wouldn't address them.
I mean, like if they was to, a situation like that, whether, they have access to they have permission from their parents to hunt when they get home from school, on their own property, on their own farms or whatever. And so, I don't know how you could hold that parent responsible if they have, I don't know how we would still let that teenager be able to hunt if the parent said, listen, I've got to keep the guns locked up, you can't hunt. That's a concern of mine. So
Again, this is on school campuses. I mean, if that kid takes that gun onto a school campus, that's not being responsible.
no, and the student that I was talking about got in trouble, even though it was unintended. They got in trouble, but with the situation, but this is carrying it to the parent. That
He's still under the supervision of the parent. He's the responsibility of the parent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stringer, you had a question and or comment. I didn't know which one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. How would this affect other people that may live in the household that would have guns? Does it apply only to the parents or?
It's only to the parent. Only to the parent. It wouldn't affect anybody else in the household. It's only to the
if
parent.
I have like an adult
If you want an amendment on there to other gun owners in the home, I'll entertain that. But this is only to the parent. This bill is germane only to the parent.
Okay.
If you all are like I am in my county, I have gone to schools and there are tons of guns that are being confiscated off of campuses that belong to parents.
Wow, hadn't heard that.
Well, I have. I've seen that.
Mr. England, I had you next, I think.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Renew my motion.
Okay, all right, Mr. Wadsworth.
If the child is living with a grandparent, the grandparent can be charged. Is that right?
It has parent or guardian. If that grandparent is the guardian of that child, yes, it can be charged.
You're aware that, most grandparents don't go, if they're keeping a child, they don't always go and get legal guardianship. So if they don't have a legal guardianship, they can't be charged. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have concerns with the bill.
Okay, Mr. Faulkner, I think you had a question or comment.
Representative Drummond, I understand the part about the school, but the first part of the bill is not dealing with, it's amending law that does not appear to deal with on school premises. And it adds Section 2, a violation of this subsection is a Class C felony. Yeah.
All it is a technical change because that Class C felony for that particular code section is in another part of the law.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
It's just moving it away.
So the very beginning of the bill that does not pertain to school premises, and it says, and I think Representative England has answered my question, is it adds a violation as a Class C felony. That is what it is now?
Yeah, it's just
Yes.
moving it to,
And putting it in this section.
so you don't have to go look at other sections.
And then the next section, again, not applying to school premises, at the very beginning of the bill, or has a drug or alcohol addiction, which appears to be just sort of technical. It also adds it says a violation of this subsection, Class A misdemeanor, and that's the same thing,
Yeah,
Representative England?
Everything other than sorry, go ahead. Everything that, everything you see in the legislation other than the proposal Representative Drummond has,
Right.
are all just technical changes.
Okay. Because that kind of caught me off guard. I was looking at these changes, and the first part of the bill is not dealing with the school premises.
Yeah, it's just all, since it's just a bunch of technical changes
Okay.
in this particular section.
All righty. Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that, Representative England.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just roll call vote.
All right, Representative Wadsworth has asked for a roll call vote, so
Can I make it just one small comment before we vote?
sure you can.
I just want to, what you're doing is not a foreign concept to the law. We, in juvenile court, for example, we charge parents for contributing to the delinquency or the dependency of minors all the time. And it's not, this isn't controversial. We ascribe relevant responsibilities to parents when they have children, because if they go out and commit a crime, or if they're not supervised and they do something ridiculous, or they don't even go to school, truancy, we charge parents with the responsibility for their children all the time. So I don't see why there should be any hesitancy in adopting that same responsibility that we do for dependency and delinquency, or making sure that they are responsible gun owners, which, by the way, whenever we have this conversation, we're always talking about responsible gun owners. So if you're a responsible gun owner, this shouldn't be a problem for you. So again, I renew my motion.
There's a motion to give this bill a favorable report as amended. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second, and you've asked for a roll call vote. You certainly get one. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hill.
Yes.
Wadsworth.
No.
England.
Yes.
Almond.
She knows.
Bedsole.
Yes.
Chestnut.
Abstain.
Faulkner.
Yes.
McClammy.
Yes.
Pettis.
Yes.
Robbins. Simpson. Standridge.
No.
Starnes.
Yes.
Stringer.
No.
Tillman.
Yes.
Okay, so Representative Drummond, your bill gets a favorable report. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, committee members.
Representative Treadaway, you ready for 191?
Thank you, committee, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 191, I was asked to carry for the Attorney General's office, and for good reason. We're seeing a lot more of this activity. We're seeing violent crime go up. We're seeing victims and perpetrators much younger than we have in the past. As you know, I spent 31 years in law enforcement, and this is alarming. And you should have a copy of the fact sheet, quick fact sheet, and a copy of this letter. Does everybody get this one too? And that's just about every sheriff and police chief have signed on to it. I'm just going to overview it. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them from there. This bill creates a statutory definition of gang member. Many states already have this. It enhances penalties on criminal activity that benefits, promotes, or furthers the interest of a gang. It establishes a mandatory minimum sentence for any individual who knowingly possesses, uses, or carries a firearm during the commission of any act intended to benefit, promote the further of the interest of a gang. Requires juveniles 16 years of age and older to be tried as an adult for any gang-related criminal activity. It defines gang member, and there's some sentencing enhancements in here. You have that in front of you. If you commit a crime in here, it's Class B, it's going to move up to an A, a D to a C, a C to a B, and so on. There's enhancements in here on firearms, the use of firearms being committed, whether it's being brandished or used. And again, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those now.
Is there amendment to this one?
Is there an amendment? I was not.
There he is.
Okay, we have an amendment. I think Representative Stringer was going to carry it.
Go ahead, Mr. Stringer, please.
Says replace line 71 on page 3 with the following: firearm silencer, any device for silencing. Replace line 157 on page 6 with the following: carried or possessed pursuant to section 13A6 261.
You've heard the amendment. Is there a motion to adopt the amendment? Thank you. Is there a second? All right, is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Treadaway, your bill is back to you as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no other questions, I move that the bill have a favorable report as amended.
Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
You know, I know your history. We talked about guns and violence and so forth. I think we've been here for about 50 years now, around, give or take a couple.
Yeah.
And I also understand that, you know, there's a gun culture and there's a counterculture that I'm completely astounded by. Like, I don't understand it. But, and I think you probably know where I'm headed with this, but do we not have any other answer besides just locking people up?
You know,
Because again, there's a commodity. When you run out of that commodity, that means, we'll say commodity here is jail space and prison space. So if your only answer becomes incarcerating everybody, that means eventually you won't be able to incarcerate anybody. And the reason I say that is we always focus on the end result, the prison part of this. But the other part of this, and I think you're also well aware of this, is that there are probably just as many people who are out on bond or bail because there's a lack of space and resources. There's also not enough judges, there's not enough prosecutors, so we can't get cases tried fast enough. So our answer to all of our issues that we run into can't be figure out another way to lock people up. And if you go through this bill, it makes it easier to treat 16-year-olds as adults. It has enhancements for Class B and C felonies if there's an affiliation between you and the person that may be tied back to a gang. It has enhancements for if you have a firearm or use a firearm. I mean, and we do this under the guise of public safety, but the more people we put in prison, the less space we have for the people who probably really need to be there. So what I'm saying is, we got to come up with some more answers than just to say, lock them up. Because eventually, everything we're going to do is actually going to work against the whole concept of public safety. So I'm not even necessarily speaking against what you're trying to do, because in the city of Tuscaloosa, we have the same issue. We also have adults who are manipulating children to go and do the things that they know they suffer less consequences for because they go to juvenile court, especially when it involves firearms. But I got to think there's another answer out here that we're just not, either we don't have the will to do or the imagination or whatever to come up with another answer to some of these problems and just to say, put them in jail for as long as possible. So, I mean, that's all I got.
Any further? Yes, sir. Mr. Tillman.
All right, Mr. Treadaway, I have a few questions, and as Representative England stated, I understand exactly what you're trying to do with the bill. But if we look at the bill and we look at parents identifying their kids as gang members, you don't see that as problematic?
No, I think if you look at what they're talking about there has to be several identifying markers. It's just not that as one. It could be Facebook, it could be flashing gang signs, tattoos, it could be the school report you as a gang member. A lot of this language is in other states have had these problems way before our state has. We're seeing an increase in this behavior. And I wish I had the answer to society's ills, but I can tell you this, if we don't do something with the type of behavior that this bill is trying to address, I can assure you we're going to have far more innocent victims dying and hurt. And what Representative England, I get it. We haven't figured that part out. But what we do know is this type of behavior is very violent. It's increasing. This type of activity is very violent in its nature, and we've got innocent victims across the state that have been killed and died in this activity. So I looked at that language you're talking about because we haven't had that here before. And so I started looking around other states, and this is not original language to the state of Alabama. So there have to be several markers and characteristics of that behavior for that to apply. And parent and guardian is one of them.
Okay, so what you just said, when they work in the inverse, creating unintended consequences for innocent kids who are just walking past a set of gang members, for people who may have family members who are in gangs. Because if I'm looking at it, what is the marker? How many of these characteristics would you need to identify a person as a gang member?
Well, if you go to page, let's see here, and again, this is language that stood up in court and has been in other places. You go to page 4 and it says, we start is identified as a gang member by an informant or previously untested reliability, and the identification is corroborated by an independent information. And it says B, he or she meets 3 or more of the following: adopts the style of the dress of a gang, adopts the use of a handgun, identified as used by a gang member, has tattoos identified, associates with 1 or more gang members, is identified as a gang member by physical evidence, and the list goes on. That's language is being used by several states.
I know, but it's Alabama. So we want to...
I understand. That's why we're trying to adopt it here.
Exactly. We want to make it remain to Alabama. Also, when you're saying style of dress, like all of these things are problematic because you're talking about fashion. You're talking about a kid who may wants to wear something of those colors. And now we're going to say that you're a gang member, and we're going to, potentially lock up a 16-year-old kid, a 17-year-old kid, because we believe, law enforcement believe that he is a gang member or he associates with a gang member.
You'd have to commit one of these crimes in here and then to be identified, and it's going to be, you'll have to apply that to the totality of everything in the crime committed, whether it was a shooting or an armed robbery or anything like that. So that's what the intent of this that language is, and this bill is.
So we pretty much creating a RICO law, criminal enterprise, correct?
I thought about that too. That was a very effective law. It brought down a lot of organized crime. And, in law enforcement, we're always reactive as far as catching up with laws of what folks are doing out there. And this piece of legislation is to address what we are seeing across this state at an alarming rate, and violent crime is very problematic. And that's what this bill does, is to address this. We're seeing these individuals involved in gangs. We're seeing them gang initiation, where they have to commit serious crimes. And this is a serious approach to that type of behavior. And if we don't address it, I'm afraid that crime's just going to keep going up.
And I can agree with you in part when it comes to that. It's just that the way the bill is currently written, I have a concern with it. So, Mr. Chairman, I would actually move that this bill be placed in the criminal subcommittee for further discussion and drafting of amendments.
I will entertain a second to that.
Second.
Is it all in favor of putting this criminal subcommittee at this point, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Opposed. I think the noes have it. Go ahead, Mr. Treadaway.
Mr. Chairman, is there any more questions? If not, I move for a favorable report.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. McClammy, please.
I just have to make a statement. I practice in the area of juvenile criminal division. And one thing I always say is that when I go down, and I'm right here in Montgomery, Alabama, when I go down to Air Base Boulevard with my clients down there, I see a revolving door of the same children coming in and out of that facility. But I have a concern about that, because when we sit here and we see children, that's what they are, children, coming in with an issue, we do not try to address the concern of what can we do to help, what type of aid, what type of programs can we put in place? I know if I see the Montgomerys around the state, why are we always going, and I guess I'm repeating Representative England, why is the first thing we think about is what's different penalties besides trying to address the core problems? You know, we have all of these nonprofit organizations. We have all of this funding that we put into building prisons, but we never try to find a program or try to find funding to get some type of rehabilitation, some type of mental therapist in, some type of programs. I mean, right here, and I say it right here in Montgomery, Alabama, where Air Base Boulevard is located, we have Trenton State Technical Community College, we have Job Corps, we have Maxwell Air Force Base. And instead of us trying to find partnerships with these core entities, and I'm sure there's so many of your own cities and counties, instead of us trying to find partnerships to identify what we can do to help these families and these children, we go to the first thing and saying, okay, well, let's lock them up and throw away the key. And we see them come in over and over and over again. But when do we have responsibility as a state to try to find funding and needs and make funding available and programs available to help the children instead of incarcerating them at such a young age?
Is that a question?
It's a question.
No, I mean, I can't disagree with you on the funding, the lack of funding. Again, I worked 31 years in Jefferson County, the city of Birmingham, and there's many programs, but unfortunately, there are individuals that fall through the cracks for whatever reason or not, and they commit very violent crimes, and that's what this is addressing.
I understand.
I've seen those revolving doors. I've seen them. I was on the streets when they were young, and dealt with them as juveniles and dealt with them over and over during the whole career. And they've been afforded every opportunity out there.
Who's been afforded every opportunity?
Individuals who are in and out of the revolving door. I have seen them get rehab after rehab, help after help. Unfortunately, there's people out here who are hell-bent on killing people. And I've seen it firsthand. I can't tell you how many homicides I've been on, hundreds. And you know what? I care more about those victims and the families left behind than we care about these folks in these prisons that have a revolving door getting in and out. And I don't know the answer, but I can tell you this, until we find it out, we better have a place to put them. Or there's going to be another victim and another victim and another family suffering. And what cost do we put on that? Well, all we hear about is the prisoners or the perpetrators of all these violent crimes.
But first of all, I don't think
look at the folks that are left behind. I go back in these neighborhoods every day and work them, and the pain and what that does, and it leaves children without a father or a mother. So I get it, but I can tell you more hardship cases out there from what's left behind with these criminals that revolve in and out of these doors. But there's a lot of good people in these communities that work. They don't go in and out of those doors. And we need to protect them.
And I 100% agree with you, because first of all, I live in those communities. I live there.
Okay.
And so I see both sides of it. I see the side where they're in my neighborhood down the street, where they are committing violent crimes. I also see the part where the families are out there on the ground with their bodies and their family members. So I live it, and I have lived it.
It's tough.
I grew up in it, and I still stay in it. So I do understand both sides, but at the same time, I do say we do find funding and financing to find housing, but we are talking about children, and this is the time where we can try to find a way to help our children before we have to build more prisons for them to live in and fall into that pipeline. Also, I have to agree with Representative Tillman. I do have a concern about the definition of vagueness of the terms of gangs. You know, we talk about a tattoo and how a tattoo. I do understand that gang members have certain tattoos, but I also understand that sometimes people see a tattoo and they like it and they think it's one thing and they get it. And I'll tell you, for instance, I was looking at, and I'm not taking away, I'm not trying to downplay the violence in our communities. Please don't get me wrong with that. But what I am trying to say is that I think that we need to be more careful. And instead of trying to find means to pipeline our children into a prison system and find a means to be a little less cautious with this and see what we can do on the front end instead of starting off on the front end, put them into a system.
Thank you, Ms. McClammy. Wait a minute, Mr. Faulkner, you next.
Well, I certainly don't disagree with the comments by my colleague, Representative McClammy, but I would like to move to give the bill a favorable report as amended.
Second. Motion is second to give the bill a favorable report as amended. Are there any other questions and or comments? Seeing none, everyone in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, the ayes have it. Mr. Treadaway, you got a favorable report on your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Chairman, members of the
very much. House Bill 234, Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before I present this, we got a chief from Mobile. If you would, Chief, I think Chief wants to say a few words. I know we don't have a public hearing.
I'm going to let him if you want him to, Mr. Wood, I am, but I want you to explain this bill before we let the chief tell us what his particular involvement is that makes it relevant, okay?
Okay, sir.
Go ahead.
We'll do the best we can. I got a detached retina. I can't get well, thanks to David Faulkner. What this bill does, it would prohibit the possession, sale, and use of a trigger activated that is designed and intended to allow a firearm to shoot more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger, and would provide penalties for the violation. That's basically what it does.
Yes, Mr. England.
At the appropriate time, I'll move to give the bill a favorable report.
All right. Chief, do you wish to say anything about that?
Come on up, Chief.
Just very briefly.
If it's going to get a favorable report, no, sir.
You know, Chief, I can tell you've been here before, and you are quick on the uptake.
He speaks well, doesn't he?
He does, very well. There's a motion for a favorable report. Is there a second?
Judge, I'll second.
Second.
Sure, I just motion second, so we got it on the, Sure, okay. Go ahead, Ms. Farr.
Yeah, Representative Wood.
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you about this. My understanding is that law enforcement fully supports this bill.
That's correct.
And I wanted to have you elaborate on that. I met with several police officers outside the committee room today that expressed their support for this bill. So can you elaborate on the support this bill has from our law enforcement?
I would dare to say that all, or if not all, most all law enforcement would support this bill, because this is a very, very dangerous. A gun is dangerous enough. But when you got one like this where it's an automatic, not a semi-automatic, it's a fully automatic. And when you have that, you've got problems. It's already against the federal law, but in Alabama, it's not against the law. So we want to get it in line with the feds on it.
If I can follow up. So if it's against the federal law, then Alabama, it would be against the law in Alabama too. But what you're saying is this would put it in our code.
In our control.
And does it mirror the federal?
Yes, sir, it would.
Okay.
Mr. Stringer, you have either a question or a comment?
Yes, sir. Faulkner kind of answered that for me. I was just kind of curious to why would the federal law not suffice, but he just kind of answered that.
The feds would, if you have something that's really serious, but you can have this, and it's serious when anyone loses their life or anything else. But I'm talking about, say, one or two compared to some gangs with the half a dozen. The feds got so much to do, they won't get in it.
Yeah.
It'll be left up to us, but we could handle all of it.
Yeah, understand. I had one other question. What the aspect about taking the weapon, why would we want to take the weapon?
The reason you take the weapon is where you could check and make sure that it does have this particular item we're talking about. sometimes you can put one in there and some of them are color coded to where you can't tell it's got one or not by just glancing at it. So you actually have to inspect the weapon to see if it has one of these trigger guards.
So it's mainly related to the Glock switch, correct? Or
Well, that's where it started. I think you can do it mostly with all of them nowadays, and it's just gonna get worse. It's like all of it. They look at different IDs all the time. Anything they can do, that's what they're gonna do.
have we not considered looking at some language or legislation to potentially increase penalties or punishments for the ones using weapons in crimes that have these devices?
Well, it's already going to be a Class B felony, I believe that's correct. And, we was just talking a while ago about putting everybody in jail. Let's do away with some of the firearms first.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be the solution, but I
agree. I don't know what the solution is, but I mean, you definitely got to stop this, because if you could see this thing in operation, when you aim it as a pistol, you may get the first shot, and all you do is pull it one time, and it empties it all out. You can have over 100 rounds, and they go out, I believe it was within a minute. And when you pull that thing, the first one to aim on what you're aiming at, and then all of a sudden the gun just goes, it goes haywire.
Yep, and as a former chief of police and a current police officer, I have seen the devices and the videos, and yeah, they can be very destructive.
Well, it's very dangerous.
Mr. Bledsoe, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, for clarity, I just follow up on a statement you made about getting rid of weapons, but this bill is not about getting rid of weapons. This bill actually addresses altering a weapon outside of what the intended design of the weapon is.
Correct.
Is that correct? So this is a semi-automatic design type weapon that this device here makes it fully automatic.
Makes it fully automatic. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Any further questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
I was just making sure, I think my Representative Wood, you'd said something about firearms first. I just was echoing the comments of my colleague that this is not banning firearms or any type of firearm. This is going against a trigger activator that allows them to become automatic weapons.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Representative Stringer asked for a roll call vote. We will certainly have one. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hill.
Yes.
Wadsworth. England.
Yes.
Almond. Bedsoe.
Yes.
Chestnut.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Yes.
McClammy. Yes. Pettis.
Yes.
Robbins.
Yes.
Simpson. Standridge. Starnes.
Yes.
Stringer. Tillman.
I was a yes.
You're a yes, okay.
Yeah, I was a yes.
That's okay. The yeses have it. You got a favorable report. Thank you a lot, Representative Wood. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Representative Schaefer. This is House Bill 272.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. HB 272 is the same bill that we have passed the House twice concerning felony attempting to elude.
I know we've passed this through this committee twice, and I think we passed it through the House twice.
We have passed it through the House twice.
Is there, okay, motion, second, is there a second? Thanks, Mr. Bledsoe. Are there any questions on this bill? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Favorable report. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, and I think that's the fastest bill ever passed by Judiciary. I will take that in my bill, and thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good luck. Senator Melson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is Senate Bill, ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 27. Ma'am?
Do you have the substitute?
Yeah, certainly. Go ahead, Senator Melson.
Several years ago, we passed an Agricultural Authority bill, and this is just a little cleanup bill. One thing it cleaned up is if you're we're on the board and you win emeritus status, but you might still be an elected official, you could get tickets and go to functions without having to worry about an ethics violation. So that's one little cleanup. The second one had to do with It's a little longer, but it has to do with P3, public-private partnerships. Maynard Cooper wrote this section for us. Like in our situation, UNA's wanting to put some dorms out there, and this allows us to work with them. And then there's hotels looking, and this allows us to work with them as well. And then the last part, it just says that currently all authorities are exempt from city ordinances. This just says only ones in the past are. Any future ones will have to work through the legislative process to get their own exemption.
Okay. Okay, are there any questions for Senator Milson? Okay, the motion second.
Second.
I'll tell you what, let's do this. I'm sorry. First thing let's do is a motion to adopt the substitute. Thank you. Is there a second to that? All right, thanks. I appreciate y'all keeping me procedurally where we need to be. It's what I want to do. So there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there now a motion to adopt or to give the substitute a favorable report? Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, Senator Melson, is this almost like an industrial development type?
Well, it's economic development, I would say, yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I read it to be too.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second for a favorable report. Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
Oh, here it comes.
I'm trying to, I agree with my chairman that this appears more an economic development bill. I'm just trying to understand why it's in Judy.
Well,
we do get a lot of stuff, but
the chairman's a good friend of mine.
We get enough bad ones. We ought to get one that makes everybody smile. All right, we got a motion and a second for a favorable report as amended on the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Senator Melson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who did the amendment on this one?
Simpson.
I know, but who's going to offer?
You're handling the bill.
Yeah, well, let's get up here. Somebody.
You handle the bill.
Yeah, I'll handle it. Will you offer?
What's the amendment?
You ready, Mr. Wadsworth?
Is it 2:30?
Simpson's got COVID.
Thank you.
And when he called me and said he had COVID, I said, please do not come. None of us want the COVID, as my granddaughter will say. You don't want the COVID, man.
Yeah.
But I told him I would be more than happy to look at this bill with it. This bill deals with criminal sanctions concerning the crime of criminal endangerment to a first responder if that individual knowingly, recklessly, or intentionally causes or permits the first responder to ingest the substance. So the chemical endangerment would be a C felony. If it causes physical injury, a B. If it causes serious physical injury, then those are defined, and an A, if it results in death. There is an amendment.
I'll offer the amendment.
Okay. Have you read the amendment?
You replace line 33 on page 2 with the following: chemical endangerment of a first responder to provide for an exception and establish, and then replace line 49 on page 2 with the following: or a mixture or combination thereof while performing his or her first responder duties. Offer that amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The amendment gets a favorable report. Is there any questions on the bill?
No, move to give the bill a favorable report as amended.
Is a second? Second. All in favor of giving the bill a second, a favorable report as amended, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Bill gets a favorable report.
Thank y'all. Folks, you know what? It's pretty interesting. We've had everything from handling trust to handling submachine guns today. So this is just the kind of stuff we get here. So thank y'all for coming. Thank you for the diligence of this committee. Thank y'all. We're adjourned.